Hello, we're going to go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, October 8th Juvenile Justice Oversight Council meeting. At this time, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Adams? Here. Ms. Gardner? Here. Mr. Gold? Mr. Ramsey? Here. Ms. Walker? Here. Mr. Ward? Ms. Dennis? Here. Mr. Fletcher?
Christina Weeder for Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Jackson?
Mona Womack here for Secretary Jackson.
Ms. Marks?
Beth Jordan here for Commissioner Marks.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Senator Carroll?
Here.
Senator Herron?
Here.
Representative Wilner? Representative Wilson? Co-Chair Storm?
Here.
Co-Chair Elliott.
I'm here.
Excuse me, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 29th, 2025 meeting? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Thank you. All in favor of those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Those minutes are adopted. Do we have any agency updates? I note that AOC has provided an agency update in the packet, but would anyone like to provide an agency update at this time? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and get into the agenda. We're going to talk about truancy today, and at this time I'd invite Chad Butler to come on up, please, and identify yourself for the record. Ashley Clark, if you want to come up and stay with him at the table, you're welcome to, or if you want to wait, it's up to you. And then we have Mr. John Tyson joining us from Alabama, and I believe he's via Zoom, and I wanted him to be able to make sure he could hear the first part of the presentation. So could we just verify he's available?
I am available.
Thank you, sir. So at this time, Mr. Butler, if you could just introduce yourself for the record, and you have the floor.
Senator Storm, thank you for having me here today. I'm Chad Butler. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel for the Meade County School System, and I'm also the President of the Kentucky Department of Pupil Personnel Directors.
Ashley, we'll go ahead and identify yourself, and then that way we can just go right into Mr. Butler's presentation.
Certainly. Ashley Clark, I'm the Executive Officer for the Department of Family and Juvenile Services at the Administrative Office of the Courts, which encompasses the Court Designated Worker Program.
Thank you. And Mr. Butler, if you could just kind of identify for the Oversight Council some issues that you've been able to observe that are prevalent throughout the Commonwealth, and any ideas that you might have or otherwise.
Certainly. Pull
your microphone a little closer.
A little bit closer, okay.
Thank you.
Through my work as DPP, we have seen, obviously, absenteeism has become a huge issue in all of our school districts across the state of Kentucky. We looked at our numbers for chronic absenteeism as of last year. I think it was 28%. I think the year before that it was maybe 30%. And this is something that seems to we can't get our handle on. Getting kids back to school is very important. No matter the programs that we do in our school systems, if kids are not present, these programs do not work, whether it be social interaction, learning, teaching, those type of things. Being present is the most important part of a student experience in our school systems. 30% chronic absenteeism is concerning, and we needed to wrap our heads around how to get kids back into school. We've got great, highly qualified teachers. We've got great administration, great leadership, great personnel, but the best part of an experience is having kids at school. And when House Bill 611 came in, I think our DPPs were asking, how do we get kids back into school with these great things that we have on in our school systems? So after year one of House Bill 611, I know we're going to talk about, we certainly saw more kids in the court system, which is never good, but looking at some of the numbers and some of the DPPs that I have spoken with, we're starting to see some we're starting to see some of our first encouraging signs potentially with our statistics. I know my own school system, I think it was 23, 24, we were sitting at about 28% chronic absenteeism. I just looked at my numbers from last year, and we were starting to get into 23%. But that's still too much. That's still too high. So we're looking at ways to get students back into our schools, and we're just looking at all avenues. We just finished our state conference where we had all the DPPs across the state, and we were presenting and we were listening to ideas. And one thing that's very common is we need to get kids back into schools. Our DPPs are all agreeing. They're all looking for ideas. We're looking for ways. I think the time of knowing that chronic absenteeism is an issue, we know that. Now we're looking for what are some best practices that are ways they're getting kids back into school. So we are certainly looking, and that's very important in our school districts right now.
Do you have any prevalent causes that you've been able to identify, or any other individuals in any other DPPs have been able to identify as like a root cause contributing to this?
Some of the things that I've heard we have mentioned and we've talked about is just, I think we've gotten into some bad habits, and some of those might be the case where we don't really know when to keep kids home, when they're sick, when they don't feel well. So we're seeing a lot of that. Since COVID, we've seen a lot of social, emotional distress that we've seen on kids, and I think that's a real issue. I really do think that is. I think we share that. Right now, the hard part is with these massive numbers is trying to decipher which kids need to stay home and which kids are being kept home when they probably would be better served at coming to school. I know in our school district, we've looked at bringing in the Healthy Kids Clinic as a way to have, in the morning, to have a nurse in our buildings where kids could be sent whenever they don't feel well, and they could potentially stay at school. And I know our superintendent actually presented about a month and a half ago as a possible solution. But right now, I think just trying to decipher with these large numbers which kids need to, because there are some students that need to stay home that don't need to be at school. But with these massive numbers is which ones can be at school and which ones can't be at school. And we're really struggling figuring out how to decipher between the two.
Mr. Press, you had a question.
Thank you. Have the statistics on chronic absenteeism been kept for a long time? And if so, can you help me with 30% is a huge number. What would it have been 10 years ago? What would it have been 20 years ago?
Good question on that too. And from our point of view, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, we've really started tracking chronic absenteeism. And I'm just going to tell you, we have been in the past looking at ADA numbers, average daily attendance numbers, and probably not as much chronic absenteeism, which, as we know, we were probably more worried in the truancy world of those are the students that didn't bring in an excuse when they're out. With chronic absenteeism, we're learning now that even when they turn in an excuse, they're still not there getting the learning. So I'm going to guess back to your question of whenever I was a principal, which was about 6 years ago, I didn't even know chronic absenteeism what it was. So it could have been measured, but it was not something that was prevalent. We talked about a lot on that as well. So I don't know what the numbers would have been. My guess, if you were asking for an educated guess on that, is I would say since COVID, those have really picked up, but I don't have any statistics with that.
Serious about football.
Senator Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this would be for you or for Ashley. I'm looking at the report from AOC about the increase in status offenses, and I'm assuming that is from the truancies and from House Bill 611. Can we just talk, one of you all talk a little bit more about what those actual numbers are as far as increases of cases going to court, and then what is the outcome of those cases, if you can talk to that?
So I do have built out a slide deck for you all that I'm going to hit on, I think, at the conclusion of the meeting. That's really going to dive into what are the actual numbers, and then we're going to look also at county by county, the increases, where those are happening at, and then how many cases are going to court, because, Senator, you're absolutely correct. We are seeing significant numbers of youth that are charged with habitual truancy entering the formal court system. I can go to that slide if you prefer, or if you prefer that I wait until we get to my section.
That's an excellent question. She's going to touch on that, I think, in a few moments. Why don't we hear from our colleagues in Alabama on some things that they've done to try to combat this, and then we'll come back to the AOC with the data, if that's okay, Senator. Okay. Anything else that you have, Mr. Butler, that you'd like to share before we get into our colleagues from Alabama?
No, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay there. But, I also want the council to hear from Mr. John Tyson. He's the director, and he's going to be appearing via Zoom. There he is, a fine gentleman that I've met down in Mobile a couple of weeks ago, and they're really doing some good things, some interesting things down there. And so, Mr. Tyson, if you could just introduce yourself, and you have the floor to share with us what good work you're doing in Alabama.
Well, I'm delighted to be invited to talk to all of you. The occasion made me try to think about connections that my family has with Kentucky, and it turns out my wife's great-grandfather was born in Louisville, and we all know about Interstate 65. That's where I live, at the end of 65, so we have some things in common. You might also know about Alabama. We take football very seriously, and we're beginning to try to play basketball. All I can say is buckle up your chin strap when the time comes, all right? By way of introduction, my most recent public office is the District Attorney of Mobile. Prior to that, I had been on the Alabama State Board of Education, and we had quite a wide responsibility there, more than you might think. No need to get into all of that at this point, but I have been interested in these issues since I first got elected to the State Board of Education in 1980. As I listened to your previous speaker, I could close my eyes and think that I was in Alabama. Truancy and chronic absenteeism have been issues. We are also interested in behavior, and the consequences of being absent for any reason are horrific. What I mean by that is that not only does it sometimes lead to criminal activities, there are a host of problematic issues that also arise that are not necessarily criminal, but cause great demands on our already stressed system. Think for a moment about underage or young pregnancies, for instance. Boy, that's a really tough issue. So with that, maybe I should share my screen and run through a quick little PowerPoint here. You should have in your materials a report that we made to the Alabama legislature and to the governor just a few days ago. It is full of data, if you will. But I have to say I like to tell the stories too. The stories make the data come alive. So let me share my screen, and we will start with the PowerPoint presentation that we threw together real quickly. Let me see. There we go. All right. The Helping Families Initiative is a program that I started when I was district attorney in Mobile. We started in about 2003. I'm no longer the district attorney in Mobile. I'm what's known as a supernumerary district attorney. That's a retired district attorney. But I am running the Helping Families Initiative Corporation that is trying to spread this program all over the state of Alabama. We would describe it as a district attorney, school, and community partnership. The report that we made was just the last day of September, just a couple of weeks ago. Our first effort to try to see what Kentucky might be experiencing, I found the statistics that your previous speaker was talking about, and I want to emphasize here that chronic absence in Alabama is defined as missing 10% of the school year. In Alabama, we have a 180-day school year. 10% is 18 days. And I want to throw in very quickly that the Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University over in Baltimore said that if a ninth grader misses 18 days of school in the ninth grade, they have reduced their chances of graduating by 80%. And by anybody's definition, that is a catastrophe. That's part of the reason that we're so interested in these kinds of numbers. The Helping Families Initiative is not designed as a punitive event. We intervene with these children and their families and their neighborhoods without arrest. I want to say that as loudly as I can. We think that we should be careful with issuing arrest warrants for children. If we can avoid it, we think that's what we should do. What we have found is that if we proceed with the idea of everyone's dignity and treat people with respect, we have a really good shot at changing some behaviors. Our chronic absenteeism, 15% of our students statewide, 20% as we get into lower income families. The Helping Families Initiative directly served over 95,000 students this past year. That includes 73,000+ families and 162,000 parents. We break it all out that way so that we can see the broad implications. You can see that we're talking about 19 district attorneys and 44 school systems. Actually, we've added a district attorney and a school system since this was prepared, so we have 20 of Alabama's 42 district attorneys participating and now 44 public school systems. In Mobile County, the program was interrupted after I left and then reinstated by the newly elected district attorney. That reinstatement led to an overall improvement of 3.15% in attendance for school year 23-24 and a 4% reduction in this issue for school year 24-25. That reflects then a 50% reduction in truancy and a 58% reduction in chronic absenteeism. Your previous speaker says you can have everybody in the world ready to go, but if the child is not in school, you've wasted the money. I couldn't have said it any better than he did. And I want you to understand that the numbers, 3.15% and 4% added together, means that by improving attendance, we recovered the value, or we saved the value of a total of $64.4 million that otherwise would have been wasted, and it only cost us about $1.32 million to do that. So the fourth little box there is a big idea. there is a return on investment that was $48.67 for every dollar we spent on the program. We think that is a compelling development here. The superintendent of the schools, Cressel Threadgill, and the district attorney, Keith Blackwood, attribute the gains that we just reviewed with the Helping Families initiative. Any questions about that? All right. The authorization for the program is our Mandatory School Attendance Act. The act actually mandates that district attorneys are to vigorously enforce our attendance laws. And that's curious to me because it doesn't even say that about murder. This is the only thing that the legislature has given this instruction for. Our statewide costs or our statewide appropriation for fiscal year 25-26, the fiscal year that just started on October 1, is $3.3 million. I would say very quickly, though, that we have local funders and some philanthropic funds that have historically matched or exceeded the state funds. And you can see immediately in Mobile County, which is the largest school system in Alabama, why it would make sense for the school system, for the county, for the city of Mobile, for the other municipalities to contribute to this work. Brief history, we started the program in 2003. And I guess the sum of all of this little timeline here is that this is not a wannabe program or a hopeful program. This is a very well established program that has been in continuous operation since 2003 through the present time. The big development for us is that as of October 1 of this year, we basically have incorporated our very own Alabama Not-for-Profit Corporation. We managed to get our name, the Helping Families Initiative, Inc., and we are a standalone nonprofit at this point. The process is that we begin with a triggering event. That's an unexcused absence or other serious violation of the codes of student conduct. I might say, I'm not really interested so much in a child talking too much or even a child sassing a teacher. I believe that those are teacher issues. In Mobile at the time we started this, they had A, B, C, D, and E violations. A C violation looks like the headings in a criminal code. The first word is arson, and then it goes to assault, and you can imagine what the rest of them are. A D violation were drugs and alcohol, and E violation were weapons. Interestingly enough, most of the time that's ordinary things being used as a weapon. Take, for instance, a baseball bat. So we have a triggering event. The next event is that we try to engage the family. That is, we are treating them with dignity and respect. We're trying to establish a relationship. We are not proceeding with arrest. We are simply helping people to understand the law of the state of Alabama and then doing everything that we can to engage them in positive behaviors. Now, if the behavior doesn't change, then we assign a case officer to the family. We do an assessment of the family, trying to evaluate the strengths and challenges that a family might have. And from that, we developed an individualized intervention plan, and we run that by an interagency team that creates a tailored support plan. By that, I mean it is child-specific, family-specific, and neighborhood-specific. That is, if we don't address the issues on all three of those levels, we're just fooling ourselves about whether or not we're going to be effective. One of the key members of support here is the family. Mind you, we're treating them with dignity and respect. We are not telling them they have to do these things. We are engaging them to help identify what the challenges are and identify existing resources that we might be able to access for them. At any rate, the plan then leads to referrals. These are existing community resources. To give you an idea about how powerful this is, at one point early on in the program, we accessed more than 300 different kinds of services offered by 188 public and private service institutions in Mobile. I didn't know there were 300 different kinds of services. And when we started looking around for agencies that might help us, we found lots and lots of resources in the community that we didn't really ever know. Mind you, the issue turns out to be communications. That is, we have a giant communications puzzle with all of the people engaged in what I call the kid business. Part of the difficulty is that they do not talk to each other. And I'll bet you, as sure as I'm sitting here, Kentucky has some of those same issues. For instance, our juvenile courts are protected by confidentiality statutes. Our Department of Human Resources also protected by confidentiality statutes. Same thing is true for our schools. We've got confidentiality statutes there. All our professionals have professional standards that say for lawyers, for instance, you have to maintain and protect the secrets of your clients. Think about the same kind of thing happening with a doctor or a counselor or a priest or you name it. Lots of reasons not to talk to each other, and the result is we do not have a coordinated response. So the follow-up thing then is simply we try to make sure that the plan is acted on and that the families access the services. We are really not interested in keeping up with the actual services. We just want to know that they are going on. Some of these things are very private and I think really not part of our business. I don't need to know a specific medical diagnosis, for instance, or specific mental health diagnosis. I just need to know that those services, if needed, are being accessed. Quantitative results for school year 24-25, 44 school systems across 19 judicial circuits. That's how our district attorneys are organized. Looks like 265 plus thousand students, or a little more than a third of the total students enrolled in public schools in Alabama. You saw this number earlier, 95 plus thousand students, 73 plus thousand families, 162 plus thousand parents. The big word here, or the 5 words that I think are hugely important, are student absenteeism wastes tax dollars. I don't think in Alabama we can afford to waste any. I suspect Kentucky is no different than Alabama. We need to improve the value of our tax dollars that are being spent on education. When we look at comparing school years 2022, 23 to 23, 24, we think statewide we recovered an educational value of $47.3 million, but the state only invested $3.3 million, so it's really quite a wonderful return. I think it's like $1 for every $14 and a few cents that we spend. Part of what makes it possible is that we have developed some technology and a case management system This is a little misleading here. It says 2023, we launched the Helping Families Case Management Database. That's really when we got started. We were basically building it as we were flying it, and I would say 2024 was a huge year. But one of the things it does is it automates the data exchange from the Alabama Department of Education and dramatically reduces the data entry clerical work that we would have to do if we had to type in every name and every absence every day. We think that our case management system will ensure consistency, accountability, real-time data tracking. This is a snapshot of what's going on in the current school year. This is beginning August 1 of 2025, running through, let's say, September 22nd of this year. And you can see that we've already reached 12,000 plus students, 10,000 families, 15,000 plus parents. We've sent out looks like almost 4,500 warning letters, 988 assessment letters. We've developed 56 individualized intervention plans, referred students, have more than 1,000 referral agencies that we are using, and that crosses 1,600 zip codes. So key ideas. Helping Families initiative is preventive. It is not punitive. Our goal is to avoid the necessity of juvenile court or adult court. We actually consider it to be a failure if one of our kids gets involved in the court system. What we're trying to do is avoid that altogether. Key takeaway number 2, we deliver measurable academic and financial benefits. I should say that we are studying the students who were participating in the program from 2003 through 2010, and we're going to catch it up, find out what happened to them all the way through 2024. It's going to take us a while to finish that study, but I think we're going to find out whether or not we had an impact on these kids' futures insofar as being arrested and included in the justice systems, or whether or not they improved their attendance in school, their behavior in school, whether they were passed to the next grade, whether they were ready for college or careers, whether or not they graduated, find out what happened with chronic absenteeism. That's an ambitious study, and I think one of the few that will have a longitudinal look at this kind of thing. Key takeaway number 3, this attention builds safer schools and stronger communities. We have a model for statewide replication and continued legislative support. What can I say? Criminals don't pay attention to jurisdictional lines, and I promise you we will do everything that we can to help make Kentucky a beneficiary of this kind of program if you're interested. Questions, anybody? Sometimes I think a way to make all this come alive is to tell a story or two. Let me tell you one that is really quite moving. We discovered last year a 17-year-old was not in school at all. And when we started finding out about her, we found out that she hadn't been to school since she was 14. And when we start looking into the circumstances of that, we find out that she was actually a victim of a forcible rape. And we found out that she got pregnant as a result of this forcible rape. And in her family and in her community, once you have pregnancy on your mind, you have basically become an adult. There's nobody else to take care of this baby. So here we are. I want you to appreciate a 14-year-old forcibly raped, having to withdraw from school. I might throw in too that English was her second language. And as we found out, she was supporting herself and the baby by washing dishes in the family restaurant. Nothing wrong with washing dishes in a family restaurant. Any good work is good work. I mean, that's not a problem. But her education was interrupted as we were trying to find out alternatives for her. It just was not appropriate to put a 17-year-old in a class where she was on the reading level maybe of a sixth grader. We found a way to do something different with adult basic education at our local two-year college. The question then is, what do we do with the baby? Mom was interested in going to college to get her basic education, but she wasn't going to let the baby out of her sight because she was afraid somebody was going to take it from her. And I want you to appreciate our taking her by the hand and walking her into the appropriate social service agencies where she could be assured that nobody was going to take away her baby and that her baby was reacting well with the other children that were there. I think this young lady now has a future. I don't think that she had much of one before. Historically, we have always looked to try to discover the future perpetrators. And it was in this case that we learned, if we find a victim, we might be able to connect enough existing resources to allow the more normal growth, if you will, so that she can take care of herself and take care of her baby in the future. I think that's a big deal. Um, um, I'll tell you another story. We'll just call this kid Johnny. Little Johnny came to our attention one day. He's 10 years old. He's standing on his desk at school and he's screaming bloody murder. I mean, literally cussing and fussing and threatening to kill the teacher and everybody in his class. Now, I want you to think for a moment what's going on in that class. It's certainly not reading, writing, or arithmetic, is it? The only way to handle this emergency was to remove all the other students from that classroom, put them out in the hall. Guess what? That's disrupted the classrooms up and down the hall, and it was loud and it was noisy and it was unusual. I would say that little Johnny basically found a way to interrupt the education of every kid up and down that hall in that school. If we had done the historic thing, we would have just simply suspended him and sent him home to get fixed. And I'm telling you from the experience I've had of being on 700 homicides as district attorney in Mobile, that in as little as 5 years, little Johnny will have acted on that impulse and pulled the trigger and can't get the bullet back. And we would all be wringing our hands wondering how could it possibly be that a 15-year-old could pull out a gun and kill someone. Well, I got news for you. Our teenagers may be the single most dangerous group of people in the community. They have unlimited energy and no judgment is what I think is really going on there. Instead, we knocked on the door. First thing we found out was that little Johnny's father was not there. Not so unusual, is it? Second thing we found out was that little Johnny's mother was also not there. That is a little more unusual to have both parents gone. We found out that an elderly grandmother was trying to take care of him. We found out there was a little brother that was unknown to us in this household and a little sister. When we knocked on the door, and I'm telling you, the grandmother couldn't believe that the district attorney's office had time enough to come knock on the door and let her know that the full power and authority of the district attorney's office was going to be used to help make the system work for her. Now, when we came into the household, we found out some things we didn't like. We found out little Johnny had punched her in the face once or twice already. We found out he was doing some things with animals that we didn't like. We found out grandmother didn't have a stove in this house. Grandmother didn't have a washing machine or a dryer for that matter. We made arrangements for all those things to happen. We made arrangements for school uniforms complete. I mean, think about little Johnny. He's 10 years old. He's screaming bloody murder. What do you suppose the other fourth graders are doing when he shows up in a dirty, mismatched, incomplete uniform at school? Maybe he smells bad. I don't know. I suspect fourth graders don't treat each other very well sometimes. We decided that we needed, just for kicks and grins, to send him to a doctor and get a checkup. And we found out that he was psychotic. Now, I have to say, so many of our children these days are born addicted to drugs or alcohol, or drugs and alcohol, that this is not as unusual event as you might think. So the doctor prescribed some medications. I will tell you, I can't pronounce or spell them. I'll just say there were some uppers and some downers and some in-betweeners. And we thought we'd done what we needed. We checked on it. His behavior hadn't changed, so we had to ask more questions. And we asked grandmama about the medicine, and she assured us that she was giving him all of his medicine at 7 o'clock in the morning. In other words, she was giving him the uppers and the downers and the in-betweeners all at 7 o'clock in the morning. My goodness, I don't know why the child didn't die. We made arrangements for the school nurse to give him his medicine when he was in school, and for a social worker to give him his medicine when he wasn't in school. The teachers thought we had worked miracles. And I will tell you, we didn't work miracles. All we did was take the time to go knock on the door and try to find the underlying root causes of the bad behaviors, and then organize to do something about it. And here we are with underlying root causes of poverty and health, and guess what? Illiteracy. You see, grandmother couldn't read the prescriptions on the bottles, or the instructions on the prescription bottles. And so while she was doing the best she could, it just didn't get him his medicine. And it was at that point that the miracle in this case actually occurred. Grandmother had a son. He was in Detroit. He had just retired from the United States Postal Service. And I want you to know, he came to Mobile. He took those 3 children and brought them into his home in Detroit. And then he bought his mother a house 2 blocks from their house and moved her up there. Now, you know what? I am not nearly as worried about the future with little Johnny as I would if we had just done the usual thing. We have story after story after story of these kinds of events.
Mr. Tyson, we have a question. Hold on one second.
Sir.
We have a question from Ms. Garner.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, just thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that.
Well, certainly.
And a couple questions, actually. So in looking at the early results in your presentation, where we've got 12,000 students who are served, and then it goes to 4,000 warning letters, and then to the 56 individualized intervention plans. I'm just curious about what that funnel looks like. So if that 12,000 is where you find students that these services aren't appropriate for them, so they're not referred on, or if families, self-select out, or what that looks like in terms of how you get from that first touch point to the individualized plans.
Well, I would say to you first, most of the families we deal with don't need an individualized plan. Most of the time, when we make contact and tell them what the law says and suggest that it's good ideas, we can solve that problem. Now, that communication is taken a variety of forms. One form you might think of, no big deal, but it's just a letter home from the district attorney. Okay. We found that to be pretty effective. We have also found email to be pretty effective. What is turning out to be the single most effective communication, though, is a text. That is, somebody's phone is ringing or vibrating in their pocket, and it is the district attorney's office on the phone wondering about why the child's not in school. That turns out to be a very effective means of communication. Sometimes the communication is in the form of a meeting. But in all of the communications, as I say, we're trying to treat people with dignity and respect. We're telling them what the law says. We're telling them that it's a good idea to comply with the law, but we're not threatening people. We're not arresting people. What we are trying to do is engage people and establish a positive relationship, and we find that that really works out well. Now, sometimes the underlying root causes of the problems are very, very difficult and complex, like with little Johnny or like with the little girl that was raped. Sometimes it's real simple. I remember one time we had a young man, he's a big kid, but come noon every day, he'd stand up from his desk and walk out of the school, and nobody at the school could get him to stop. And they got us involved, and we went and watched him one day. Sure enough, noon came by. He got up, walked out of the school, and was walking down the street. The next day, our case officer had parked on the street where he was walking, and when he got to the car, she said, called him by name and said, "Where are you going?" And she noticed that he had his shoes slung across his shoulder, tied the shoelaces together, slung them across his shoulder. You know what the problem was? Is that this child was wearing his father's shoes, size 12s, but his feet were so big he needed size 15 shoes. And our case officer managed to get a men's church group to buy him a pair of size 15 shoes. The shoes were so big they came in separate boxes. And this men's group decided, you know what, this young man is growing like a weed. We better get him some shoes for 6 months from now. And they did, and we solved our problem. And we have a lot of fun telling that story, but sometimes it's the most simple of things that the kid was getting up and leaving school because his feet hurt, is what it amounts to. And isn't it wonderful that we could find such an easy solution with existing resources in the community?
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Another question.
Mr. Tyson, as it relates to the material you provided, you filed a report with the Alabama legislature. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I sure did. And you might notice that we had substantial revisions from the one we handed to you when you came to Mobile. This is the final version that you have now in your hand, the one that we've actually delivered.
On page 15, do you have a copy of that in front of you?
Yes, if you'll give me just a second. I've got to put on another. Let's see.
I think it's actually on page slide 5 of that current presentation. If you want to go to it, slide 5.
Well, okay, let me do that.
I think it's slide 5. On the
Is
left
that
hand,
it?
yes. The second entry there,
Yes.
it talks about 50% reduction in truancy and 58% reduction in chronic absenteeism. That's the same data that you've turned in to the Alabama legislature. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's on page 15 of the report that you filed with them.
I think it's page 15. We certainly did file that with them. I don't recall the page number right off the top of my head. I would refer you, though, to the very back of the report, and you will see a news report of the press conference that the superintendent and district attorney had, and you can read for yourself what was reported there.
That's exactly what I was referring to. That's Exhibit A is the press conference there with the DA down there in Mobile, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And he cited the Helping Families Initiative he feels is what led to that reduction. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is accurate, and that is the opinion of Cressel Threadgill, the superintendent, who's standing right next to Keith Blackwood making this public announcement. I have since had several conversations with them about it, and I'm confident that they say the single thing that made the difference was the Helping Families Initiative.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, Senator Herron.
Thank you. I do have one question. I know that here in Kentucky, we have not done the best job of providing funding on the front end for those prevention services, and it sounds like that this program is based on prevention. Can you talk about how much money that you all put in on the front end, whether it was to assist and give support some of those nonprofit organizations that you're partnering with, or just what was the financial investment on the front end of dealing with the truancy issue?
Well, let me answer that question statewide, and then I'll try to come back to Mobile. All right. For the current fiscal year and for last fiscal year, the state appropriation is $3.3 million, $3,300,000. Local funders have historically matched that number or exceeded that number. Now, in Mobile, we gave to the district attorney through the Helping Families Initiative what we call 2 case officer units. Some of you who may be used to hearing educators talk, they sometimes talk about teacher units. Those are funding units, and a funding unit, in this instance, a case officer's funding unit, tries to consider salary, fringes, and benefits, tries to consider all the materials, the communications, all the entire cost of what putting a case officer in the field is. It costs pretty much the same as to what a teacher has, with one exception, and that is our case officers are out and about in the community all the time. I would say out of a 5-day work week, a case officer has to be in the field, traveling to homes, to schools, to service providers, probably 3 days out of the week. And that transportation cost is something that we try to put into the factors. The current value of a case officer unit is $86,700. I don't know how that might compare to a teacher unit in Kentucky, but I'll bet we're not too far off. I would say we could use some more money than that for a teacher unit, but that's how we do it. In Mobile, we gave the district attorney's office 2 teacher units and then a little bit more, and the school system put $500,000 into the program. When I say put it into the program, they actually gave the grant to the district attorney, who then hires his case officer staff and goes about the work. The return on investment there is just absolutely staggering. It gets to the return on investment for every dollar the state of Alabama, through helping families, put into the program, plus what the Mobile County school system put into the program, got returned to them something like $48.67 for every dollar we spent. It's astonishing return. If I were selling you stock and I said to you, give me $1 today and a year later I'll give you 47 back, you'd call the cops on me. But I'm telling you, that is what the combined power of the district attorney, in partnership with the schools, in partnership with the community agencies, brings to this fight. We call it drilling into the power of community. And we find that even the poorest of neighborhoods has really good anchor points to get started with the delivery of things. You can appreciate, I suppose, that in rural Alabama, they might say, well, we don't have all the things that they have in Birmingham, or we don't have all the things they have in Mobile. And my response to them is, well, I know you have a district attorney's office. I know you have a sheriff. I know you have somebody from the Department of Human Resources, our public social service agencies. Sometimes there is a health department, many times not in Alabama. I bet you have some United Way type agencies, but if not, if you just simply have churches, you know what, you have got enough of a mix to make a difference with these kids. And I'm telling you, we're proving that all over the state. I'll give you an example. In Circuit 40, probably the smallest in terms of people jurisdiction in Alabama for district attorney's offices in Clay and Coosa County. Between the two counties, we probably have a total of about 3,000 students. When we were trying to figure out the impact of the program on that circuit, the juvenile prosecutors said, well, we've got an idea for you. And I said, well, all right, tell me what you mean. And they said, in the year before we installed Helping Families, we had something on the order of 180 truancy cases filed with our courts. In the year following that, we had a total of 8. That allowed then us to do some more work for more difficult trouble. We found a family who was having a lot of trouble with the kids getting to school on time, just problem after problem after problem. We go knock on the door and we find out that these kids are being abused by their father. We find out that he was a convicted felon. We found him in a parking lot doing unmentionable things to an infant daughter. We removed those children from that house and we charged him with rape, and he's now sentenced to 40 years in the Alabama penitentiary system. And that, my friends, is that's as powerful as it gets.
Mr. Tyson, we have another question. This will be
Yes,
the
sir.
last question at this point, since we do have another presenter. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And listening to this testimony, and I very much appreciate you being here, sir. You know, the Friskies program came to mind, that a lot of similarities in what he's describing as far as support is very much within the mission of the Friskies program. And I wonder in our state if there were some type of partnership, and I don't know how much Friskies gets involved with these students who are habitually absent, but maybe an opportunity for a partnership with the courts and Friskies to to set up some structure of that nature. And I know in some of the school districts where they actually have police departments within the school district, they spend a lot of time on truancy and dealing with it at the school level. But those are just some thoughts that came to mind hearing the testimony.
Thank you, Senator Carroll.
I want to add an idea to what I've said. The district attorney's office does not try to deliver all of the services that might be available. What we try to do with this program is broker the services. So if we had a Friskies program, and I don't know what they do, but if we had a Friskies program, we might well refer a child and a family to the Friskies program. That's what I mean when we talk about existing services. The district attorney's office is not a social service delivery agency. We can, however, figure out a few things and broker the services. Mind you, perhaps a most important kind of service might be finding somebody in that household a job. I mean, that's a big deal when it comes to the ability of a family to meet the needs of the day. But yeah, we would openly and wholeheartedly support a Friskies type program.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. At this time, Ms. Clark, would you like to go ahead with your presentation? Mr. Tyson, you're welcome to listen, or you're welcome to sign off, whichever meets your approval.
I'm going to listen for a while. It's the first time I've had to listen to this about Kentucky. I'd be very interested to spend a little more time with you. So thank you.
All right, thank you for having us today to talk about truancy trends and the data that we're seeing within the Court Designated Worker Program. And so if you are not aware, the Court Designated Worker Program, or CDW, we love the acronyms at the AOC, we are the intake agency as it relates to public and status offense complaints for all youth that enter the juvenile justice system. On this slide, it's just highlighting that, habitual truancy is a status offense. Habitual truancy complaints can be filed at 6 unexcused events. It's already been mentioned here today about House Bill 611, and these are just some key provisions that you will see throughout the data slides, because you're going to see an adjustment between fiscal years. It's really going to show you the impact from this legislation. At 15 unexcused events, the DPP, or Director of Pupil Personnel, must notify the county attorney within that district. It does distinguish between grade levels. So from 6 to 12, the county attorney may advise the Director of Pupil Personnel to file the affidavit to file a habitual truancy complaint with the CDW. And then if they're eligible for diversion, which is pre-court diversion through the Court Designated Worker Program, the Court Designated Worker would notify the county attorney of the recommendation, and then they can choose for that case to be handled informally or to file a petition with the court. Again, an affidavit must be filed by the Director of Pupil Personnel, and it must be completed at the delivery to the CDW. And then they're going to enter the information on a juvenile complaint status offense and schedule a preliminary intake inquiry, which is all outlined within statute. So how many cases are we talking about? In fiscal year 24, we had almost 2,900 truancy complaints filed, and we have seen a uptick to almost 3,500 complaints filed in fiscal year 25. How many days is a student missing at the time of filing? We have seen a slight decrease. So the other slide you're going to see here says during fiscal year 24, a student had accumulated an average of 24 days at the time of a habitual truancy complaint being filed. And then again, the decrease to 23 days in fiscal year 25. Running total of truancy complaints filed by fiscal year. So this is going to show you again fiscal year 24 and 25. Typically, we begin seeing the numbers rise in the month of October, and that stayed consistent between both years. And then you will see in the month of February through the spring months, we really saw a significant increase in habitual truancy complaint filings. Truancy complaints filed by complaint county. So counties with higher levels of filings can be found in the blue shades, with Jefferson, Fayette, Warren, Davis, and Christian having the most, and counties along the Virginia border generally above their average filing numbers compared to many of the counties outside of that region. This map will show you counties in blue had an increase in truancy filings in fiscal year 25, while those in orange saw a decrease. And if they are white, there were no filings of truancy in those counties. Complaints by reported absences. So again, these are the number of days that a student had accumulated at the time of filing a habitual truancy complaint. You do see that threshold of the 15 days that it's identified within House Bill 611 as your majority, but then there are also additional days students have missed, 31 to 40, 298 in particular, and then upwards of 76 filings had 71 or more days absent. This is going to break down those average absences by county. Counties in purple, an average filed after 15 unexcused absences, while those in gold were filed before the student had accumulated 15 days. So once a habitual truancy complaint has been filed with a court-designated worker, again, they're going to schedule that preliminary intake inquiry. They're going to gather demographic information. They're going to read the student their rights, explain the charge against them, and then they're going to do the global appraisal of individual needs short screener, human trafficking screener. Following that preliminary intake inquiry, they're going to notify the school system. So that's relatively new within the past 5 years, where the court-designated worker will reach out to the school to gain additional information on the student prior to that youth being placed on diversion. When the student is there with the CDW in the office, even though the county attorney may object to diversion, we go ahead and schedule that appointment with the youth and family. For one, it's more convenient for that family setting right there in front of you. And then if the county attorney does object to the diversion eligibility and asks for the case to be filed with formal court, we notify the family at that time. Diversion does look quite different with the CDW program now. In the month of September, we rolled out diversion case plans across the state. We have been piloting the case plan approach for about a year now. We used a plan, do, study, act model to really hammer out what our policies and procedures would look like in a case plan approach. So the CDW staff works with the youth and family on establishing goals, and then establishes action steps identifying who's responsible for each action step to reach that ultimate goal. So it could be the parent's responsibility to do something, the CDW's responsibility to do something, or the child, versus a compliance-driven model in diversion that's you will do this, check, you won't do this, check, but to actually reach those goals that motivate that student. A key provision also within House Bill 611 expanded diversion from a 6-month period to a 12-month period. So court-designated workers do work with youth up to 12 months. The Family Accountability Intervention and Response Team, the FAIR team, these are the reasons why cases were sent to that FAIR team within communities. We knew due to the changes within House Bill 611, if we did not get habitual truancy complaints to the FAIR team very swiftly, that student, if they accumulated 4 additional days while on diversion, they would be deemed failed, and a petition would be filed with court. So all habitual truancy cases are presented to the FAIR team, because as you can imagine, a student could go on diversion on Monday and be deemed failed on Friday. This slide is just a status of where complaints lie within the court designated worker program from 2025. Only 35% are open, 64% of habitual truancy cases were closed. A majority of truancy complaints filed in 25 have already been closed and have been referred to formal court. And so there is the option that the county attorney may dismiss a habitual truancy complaint at the fair team level, and that's reflected on the slide with 12% of those cases. Understanding the reasons on why a habitual truancy complaint would be sent to court, we knew that the legislature would likely be interested to know why a student was unsuccessful in diversion. So we did add a carve out within our case management system if the student accumulated 4 additional days after being placed on diversion, and that's the highest reason on why a student is going into formal court, with 639 complaints were unsuccessful with the CDW. 505 failed to appear for a scheduled appointment with the CDW, so we do make phone calls to the student and family. That information is provided again on that affidavit that the Director of Pupil Personnel files with the CDW, and then we mail notice for the scheduled appointment. If they fail to appear, we have to move their cases deeper into the system. The next reason, the county attorney objected to the recommendation of diversion and asked for the petition to be filed in formal court. 94 children asked for their cases to be filed, so diversion is voluntary, and some would rather go to court than work with the CDW, and they have every right to ask for that. Other reasons that a diversion may be unsuccessful outside of missing school is that they're not participating programming or interventions that are within that diversion case plan, which led to their case being sent unsuccessful to court. The CDW referred to formal court would mean they did not meet eligibility for diversion. Informal adjustment is an option that the courts do have if a petition is filed, that they can informally adjust a case, and the CDW then monitors that case for a certain period of time and then feeds that information back to the court, and some were unsuccessful in that informal adjustment process. We did have a case of lack of parental cooperation, and then a judge can override also a case to be sent to court. During fiscal year 25, there was a 147% increase in the number of truancy complaints referred to formal court. This is a result from both the increase of number of truancy complaints that were filed overall and a higher percentage of truancy complaints being referred to court. So I believe, Senator Herron, if that answers your question on how many cases are we talking about entering the formal court system, you can see the dockets should be quite large now compared to where they were at in 2024. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, noticing that Mr. Tyson was going to be speaking today, is the Court Designated Worker Program since the early 2000s has offered a truancy diversion program, which is truly a partnership between the schools and the court systems. Some prosecutors are involved. Typically, a judge is going to be involved, but we develop these TDP teams, and it encompasses the Friskies, our law enforcement partners that are in the school, mental health providers, both that are school-based and those that come into the school to offer services and supports to those students. It is a 3-phase intervention, and so it's very early on. The school would identify a student that had accumulated 3 days. We do not have the staffing and support. We have a lot of legislative duties or statutory duties that we must abide by within the CDW program. But I can give you the example of what it was like when I was boots on the ground in my judicial district. And so I had 2 counties that I went back and forth. I'm a single person office, In one of my counties, I had 6 middle schools. And so my DPP, came and said, Ashley, I've heard about this, truancy diversion program. And I'm like, I can't do all these schools, but what I can do is one of those schools. And so he went back, looked at his data, identified the school that was feeding the high school numbers at the middle school level, with unexcused absences or leading to chronic absenteeism. And that's the school that we targeted back 18 years ago when I was a boots on the ground worker. And so we can't offer this in every school system that exists in Kentucky, but we do have partnerships across the state that have really, since the early 2000s, again, when we started offering this program, have really hung with us, or they faded away, and other leadership has come in and asked from the school system for us to re-engage. We send notice, either it has the prosecutor's letterhead on it or the judge's letterhead on it, and that typically does get the attention of the parents that we're serving, because it's not just another letter from the school that they're receiving, where they come and they meet with all these stakeholders to talk about, just like Mr. Tyson mentioned, these are kind of the consequences. This is what the law says. This is, how bad it could get, but what can we do to help support you? We've had some school systems that opened up the time frame to say, hey, you're telling me you came to this meeting, you're telling me you have 3 doctor's notes that your kid failed to turn in. And I don't think we may see that as much as we used to back 18 years ago when I was the boots on the ground worker, because now we have apps where we can just take a picture and submit our kids' notes. But back then we didn't have that. And so if your student didn't, take that physical note to school and turn it in, it was counted as an unexcused event. And so because they participated in TDP, they would open that window to accept those notes and excuse those absences. And so that's just one example of a success that truancy diversion has had. Again, it's a 3-pronged approach. If the student continues to meet, that team then continues to intervene with that young person. And so if that first light touch of we've talked about the requirements of school attendance, for the most of our children, that usually is, the light switches and the parents are engaged and they're monitoring their child's attendance. But then you have a population that continues to miss. That's when we continue to be engaged and do one-on-one meetings and check-ins with the youth during the school day. And then if they continue to accumulate up to that 15 days, then a habitual truancy complaint would be filed. And this is just to highlight where we were in the 2023-2024 school year. We had 43 active sites, and we did reduce down to only 28 this past school year. We did partner with Mr. Butler, and we presented at the DPP conference that was held last month, I believe, to really, gain that insight if this is something that we offer, if it's something that you're interested in. Of course, we meet with our judiciary at the local level, our prosecutors, and who wants to be involved or engaged from the juvenile system. I also would like to highlight that Jefferson County also came on board last school year. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Family Court Judge Derwin Webb out of Jefferson County, who has sponsored 2 schools and heavily been engaged in truancy diversion program. And I won't speak for him, but the sheer volume of students that we have in JCPS, you can tell from the data on how many filings that we see within the court designated worker program. It's no easy feat, but he has rallied the other judges within Jefferson County as well, and we're expanding this year with 4 additional family court judges. And just final thoughts, we know that early intervention does work. The swifter and quicker we can get involved with youth and families, the more successful they are. Just as Mr. Tyson said, we do all work in our silos, and the moment we take the silos down, we truly see a difference in the youth and families that we all serve.
Ms. Clark, could you go back a couple screens? I think you had that one there. So in 23-24, there were how many schools that participated, or how many counties?
We had 43
and then,
counties participating.
And then currently? Go to the next one.
28.
Can you explain to the council what the driver behind going from 43 down to 28 counties might be?
I can make the assumption of just the conversation that we've had at the local level. We went out following in the month of July and August, following the passage of House Bill 611. We had about 14 form changes alone within the CDW program on process changes related to the bill to talk through with our DPPs, like, okay, you have to communicate with the county attorney when the student has accumulated 15 days. I think there was a lot of hesitation, not knowing what the new process was going to look like. Prior to House Bill 611, it was at the discretion of the DPP. I know Mr. Tyson spoke about there's an interface there in Alabama. We don't have that in Kentucky. We don't receive data from KDE. The court system does not. I'm unsure of other state agencies receiving statewide access and feeders of that information. But we also don't solicit complaints, and so we wouldn't go after this student's already accumulated X number of days to receive those complaints. So I think there was a lot of unknown and because it was so significantly changing the structure of how habitual truancy was filed.
And then Mr. Tyson talked about DAs or district attorneys down in Alabama, and we have a different setup with county attorneys and Commonwealth attorneys. But tell us about how many counties court-designated workers are in throughout Kentucky.
So we have 108 court-designated workers. Of those 180, we have around 50 court-designated specialists, which process habitual truancy complaints solely. We do have to pull in court-designated workers to assist with the data entry, the interviews, but those court-designated specialists across the state, and there is around 50 of those, are monitoring and case-presenting habitual truancy complaints to the FAIR teams.
Senator Carroll has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick questions. Ashley, over a 10-year period, I don't expect you to quote exact numbers, but the trend on complaints looking 10 years back, is it steadily increased, or what does that look like over a 10-year period? Shooting from the hip,
Truancy has always been a fluctuating number, and I'm going to look to my data expert. So we are currently lower than pre-pandemic numbers.
Okay. And the other question, we spend a lot of time talking about alternative education in the state and creating new avenues that work for students. How much of a role does that play in alternatives and what you all do in your program? Do you all try to offer alternative education systems that perhaps that particular student might be more successful in, and what does that look like?
Sure. We have really strong relationships across the state with our Director of Pupil Personnel. We have court-designated workers have no role in saying how they should be educated, but we do have those lines of communication where we can talk through. The student brought up this. We do partner and utilize the Challenge Academies, which have an education component to it. There are 2 in the state of Kentucky, but they are considered like an out-of-home placement because they're going, they're going to reside there on base. Fort Knox, I was going to say Fort Campbell, but it's Fort Knox, that those youth would go to and receive that educational instruction along with all the other things that those programs offer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Weeder.
Thank you. When you said, obviously you've already talked about some of the speculation about the decline in the number of TDP sites for this most recent year compared to the prior year and the impact of House Bill 611. But, going back to something that you said earlier when you were talking about your experience being boots on the ground and just AOC not being able to offer these options to every county in the state, can you say a little bit more about why that would be that we wouldn't be able to offer this in every county in the state? Is it a funding issue? Is it a resource issue? Services? What are the reasons that this could not be expanded to be implemented statewide if we could get, beyond the hurdles that were thrown in there with House Bill 611?
Sure. Simply, we do not have the staff support, and so having 180 CDWs across the state, and that's inclusive of those court designated specialists, because you're first and foremost a CDW. We just don't have the staff support. The number of school systems, even in my rural area, it would be impossible, because we don't simply process status offense complaints. We also process public offense complaints. We're on call for law enforcement after hours, and so there's a lot of obligations outside of truancy.
Senator Herron.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to kind of what Senator Carroll had asked. So can you walk just a scenario if we have a 16-year-old kid who's in school and is going down the path of being a truant, habitual truancy, and you talk to that kid and they say, you look at their credits and they don't have enough credits. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the time that they're going to turn 18, within the current structure, they're not going to have enough credits to graduate before they turn 18. What is kind of that process when you have those scenarios, which options that you can give young people, or just how do you handle a case like that?
Sure. The statute says shall attend school regularly, and so that's a requirement within diversion that you must attend school regularly, regardless if you're in front of us for truancy or assault or possession of marijuana. Every single diversion must encompass that as the goal. Again, we can talk with the DPP. The family may also express interest in something, and we help them to investigate that. And so maybe they're looking at P-Foster, but they don't really, which is a web-based program that you can go through. We would help them investigate that. How would you get? What would the cost be? And then also talking with our school partners. Is there anything they can do? Like, this kid is set up for failure already. Even if they do attend for the next 12 months with us, they're going to drop out. And so what is success? And yes, yeah.
Just to give you a little bit, I might expand on hers a little bit too, is one of the positive things that probably happened since COVID was we have thought about education a little bit differently. You've got a kid who is, let's say, is approaching 18, but let's say they are 3 grade levels behind. Well, there is some creative things that we've come up with, and some of those are, you've heard the virtual option where kids are at home. Well, if you're at virtual, you could actually get more credits than you could when we traditionally probably went to school. You could probably go to 6 classes, you get 6 in a semester or a year. In virtual, you could actually double that. And so those are some things we've done. But we've actually now, where we have that virtual option sometimes within a school day, so you don't have to do it at home. You can actually have a school within a school where you're doing something where your kid can have an accelerated experience of learning as well. So those are some things that we have been doing, and kind of what Senator Carroll asked earlier, are there some avenues, are there some ways? We've been able to really, I think school districts across the state since COVID, that is probably one of the big advances we've had since then, is having to think about that school experience much differently than we did pre-COVID on that as well. So those are options. Each district's a little bit different. And with those options, it's still under the compulsory attendance that they still have to attend. So if you're a virtual student, let's say you're a virtual student, you'd have to log on once in the morning and once in the afternoon and make that adequate progress, but you would get a half-day attendance in the morning, half-day in the afternoon. Well, you could still do that same within that school, within a school, where they're not in front of a teacher necessarily, but they are on a program. Because we don't want them doing the Penn Foster homeschool programs that we're seeing more and more and more. We want to have some of that experience within our school system. So hope that answers a little bit too, and maybe some of those questions that you had. But there are some avenues when a kid's behind that we can think creatively and get them caught up.
Thank you. I have just one follow-up, if you don't mind. Just in general, as far as the CDW program, I was a CDW for several years, and I learned a lot. And I know that you said that you have changed a little bit around what that diversion looks like. Can you talk about, I know that before there was a thing of, the courts, we don't pay for services. So if kids were referred to a program, that service provider or that program wouldn't necessarily be compensated or anything like that. Can you talk about that process now? Is it different? Is it the same? If you all recommend a kid go to a program, how is that program or nonprofit or other folks getting funded? Is that through you all? Is that separate? Can you just talk about that?
Yeah. And I look at Commissioner White because we have partnered significantly on alternatives to detention over the last 2 years that I've been in this role to encompass programming that is paid for. I then can look over here at DBH-DID, and they have the KY6 grant that also pays for our youth to have access to services and supports. So those monies are not filtering through the AOC. They're being paid by different entities. So that is still the same, but we do have access to way more. We need more. We're not capped out on services and supports, but we do have access to more than we have ever had access in my 18-year career.
Mr. Preston.
Ms. Clark, at the end of your comments with the presentation, you referred to silos, and that's always been a problem in any space, but particularly in this one. When fair teams were created, the whole idea was that would take care of the silos. We get everybody from a community in the room, and they can work through these issues. For me, the most dramatic slide that you've got is, if I'm understanding it correctly, 82% of the truancy cases that come into a fair team go out of a fair team to court, not with success. So more than 4 in 5 are not working at the fair team level. I'm a big fan of the fair team concept. Do you have, it's probably beyond the scope of this meeting, but do you have a quick recommendation? What do we need to do to make the fair teams more successful in addressing this? Because I think, frankly, fair teams were our attempt to do what Mr. Tyson talked about from Alabama.
Fair teams are at the local level, but we don't always have the right players at the table, even though they're named in the statute of who comes, who has hands, eyes on these kids every day at the local level. And I think that's, in my opinion, why we see success with Truancy Diversion Program. We actually go to the school. Those are the people. And it's not always the director or pupil personnel. They're not with that student day in and day out. They're circulating, within their schools. But, your Family Resource Youth Service Center is there. Your law enforcement officer is there. Your guidance counselor is there. And they have a wealth of knowledge outside of us system folks, right, have about these individual families, and can intervene much swiftly than even the larger scale of the fair team.
So do you believe the fair team concept could still work? We just need to get more buy-in and motivation, I guess, at the local level?
I would say that multidisciplinary teams have always been more successful than having an individual worker sitting behind a table. We see that in our specialty courts as well when it comes to mental health courts, drug courts, veteran courts. Those are all multidisciplinary team approaches. I would say we see success in multidisciplinary teams. So could we do better? I would say yes. We could always improve, specifically around how many kids are entering the formal court system.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no other we have one question. Go ahead.
What schools in Jefferson County are you all partnering with?
We were in Olmsted North and South last school year, and I could not list you off, but I could get you a list of schools that we are going into this school year.
Okay. And do you all provide resources to families who like Mr. Tyson, and I apologize, how he reached out and found out that there was a grandmother or a family member taking care of children? Do you all provide resources to those families that are in need and that are have reached out for assistance?
Yes, ma'am. So just like Mr. Tyson's group, they don't pay for services either. Just like the court designated worker, you leverage what's in your local community. And really, you're a navigator for those families. You're making that warm handoff approach to where you can say, okay, your kid needs an assessment done. Where would you like to go? Here's a list. What insurances take where? I'm going to pick up that phone and call and get that appointment set up for you. Just that case management approach through diversion or through the Truancy diversion program as well.
Okay. And I asked because I was a caregiver for my nieces and nephews. Mm-hmm. And when I was reaching out trying to get help for the one that did not finish school, who should have had a court designated worker, I did not. I mean, I reached out. I have receipts of where I reached out, and I could not find any resources. So I just want to have something that if a parent comes to me, because I am an educator with JCPS, if they come to me and needing some assistance, that I can direct them.
And we're statutorily required to supply community resource directories to the school August 1st of every year. So JCPS, we do provide the school system with an exhaustive community resource list every year.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyson, are you still on the line with us? Maybe not. Well, oh, is he? Okay. I just wanted to thank him for his time today and
I'm here, Senator. I'm sorry, I was muted. That's all.
No, that's perfect. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the council for your time today and speaking with us, and to you presenters and to everyone else here on the council or listening. You know, if Alabama can reduce truancy by 50%, I would think that with the efforts of the CDW and all of us here in this room and everyone in the General Assembly, we can help Kentucky reduce that even further for our citizens. So seeing nothing else, no questions, nothing else on the agenda, we are adjourned. We will announce the next date at a later time. I think Co-Chair Elliott will get that date out to everyone as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.